I'm here with writer, actor, songwriter, composer, comedian, Emmy winner, and most importantly, fashion icon, Bruce Vilanch.
It is I. Shake your head, darling.
Bruce, welcome to Fanachek. Thank you so much for doing this, man. Huge fan. I got to ask, are you in the WGA? Are you on strike right now?
Oh, yeah. I've been in the WGA for 100 years. This is my 6th strike by my count.
Nice.
Since I joined. And I've very strong positions on it, but that's because I'm older than most of them now. So a lot of them, the last one was 15 years ago. They don't know what a strike actually is. They don't know what you can accomplish or can't accomplish. So, I step away from the vehicle.
Got you. Understood. Well, you and I have two things in common.
I support the guild.
I'm sure. Yeah.
The guild, and I've been paying the guild money for years, and and they're good. But I'm a realist. Anyway, yes.
I love it. You and I have two things in common. Both born in New York City. I was raised in the Bronx, by the way. You were raised, remind me, was it Long Island?
Across the bridge.
That's right. You were born in New York, though, right? But then raised
and trucked across the bridge.
To Paterson?
To Paterson, New Jersey. Very good, yeah.
And then also, though, we were both born on November 23rd, you and I.
You're kidding. You, me, and Miley Cyrus.
Yes, that's right. That's the only two celebrities I know.
I worked with her father, and she was a little kid. And then, of course, she was 15, and she was a huge star. And we had her on the Academy Awards because they'd done a picture with Hannah Montana, her Disney Channel character, and they had done a concert movie and whatnot. And so she was a big box office attraction that year. And of course, they always try to have those on the Oscar show. So we had her, and I said, until you came along, I was the most famous person born on this day still alive, according to the New York Times. You usurper. You are now the most famous person born alive.
She really is. I mean, not too long ago, I was at a Whole Foods, actually, and I was checking out, and the cashier was like, hey, we have the same birthday. Me, you, and Miley Cyrus. That's exactly what he said to me.
And I mean, Steve Landesberg had that birthday, and the other guy who's on the list, I mean, the Times does this every year. Joe Esterhazy, who wrote Basic Instinct.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I think Boris Karloff was the biggest deal.
Well, Billy the Kid, too. Billy the Kid is credited as number one.
Oh, that's right, Billy the Kid.
Billy the Kid.
A favorite sex pot. Oh God, her name is Brooke. What's her name? Eek. British. She's very good. I can't think of her name, but there are a few other people who I have encountered over the years. So welcome to the club. We each say to each other.
Yeah. We should have a meeting.
It's around Thanksgiving. It will be Thanksgiving
this year.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
But they changed it at one point because they didn't want to lose a week of retail.
Oh, really?
It used to be the last Thursday but if the last Thursday was November 30th, they would lose a whole week of retail of Christmas sales because that started Christmas. So the retailers petitioned to make it. It could only be the last Thursday in November if that falls after a certain date. I couldn't do the math. But I think we are the last day that they get the full week, because 7 and 3 are 10. That's why. That's how we know this, right?
Fair enough, man.
There we are. Isn't it fascinating, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary people?
I've been a fan of yours for a long time, so I know you've been behind the scenes for years and years. You really came to the public eye, to the lay people, if you will, in the 90s, and for me, it was Get Bruce. Because I didn't watch Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares, that kind of happened at the same time.
Yeah, I didn't really follow Hollywood Squares. I was aware of it, and Whoopi Goldberg and all, but I loved Get Bruce. So I'd seen Get Bruce, and I recently rewatched it, and we'll talk about it. But I mean, I was talking to my wife about this. I was like, I got Bruce Vilanch coming on. This is huge. And I was trying to explain who you were. I was like, no, this isn't just a comedy writer. I mean, this is a guy who takes people like Roseanne, Bette Midler, Whoopi Goldberg, Billy Crystal, Robin Williams, Paul Reiser, and makes them funnier. Like, he writes for them in their voice. That's legendary, Bruce.
It's a collaboration, I'd like to point out, because some of those people are still alive.
Well, I mean, it's But I got to ask. So again, I saw that I probably 99. I first saw Get Bruce. I recently rewatched it in preparation for this. One thing aged weird about it that I got to ask you about. Seagal, Steven Seagal. Is he as big a dick as I've always heard, or was he lovely?
Well, apparently, I mean, that was my only encounter with him. That was we shot at a benefit for the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation. Elizabeth turns 60 or 65, and maybe she sold a birthday special to ABC, and the licensing fee went to produce the show, and we sold a house out to Pantages in Hollywood, and that was all a donation to her AIDS Foundation. So a lot of people were on the show and doing various things, and Steven Seagal was one of them, and he had been paired by the producer with Salma Hayek. And Verve. And I wrote a bit for them, and they were shooting us in the audience, kind of rehearsing it. And Steven Seagal, I'm convinced, did not want to be in this movie. I think he thought that it was a TV thing of like Entertainment Tonight, and he didn't want to do it. But they said, "Oh, please do this. It'll be a big favor and all that." And Salma wants to do it, so they did it. But he started. Every other word was fuck.
Right.
The fucking show and the fucking Elizabeth and the fucking this and goddamn the cock and everything. And because he was confident that they would cut it all out or they wouldn't be able to use it.
Sure.
So that was what he was doing. And I don't know exactly how much of that is in that clip, but I do know that Salma is like to one side and she doesn't want to get any honor.
Right.
And we were all just laughing because this is obviously what he was doing, and he was digging his own grave.
Right.
And when it finally came out, I said, I think we should absolutely put that in the movie because he's such a putz.
Yeah, I think he was saying cocksucker in Get Bruce. And,
I think that is a cocksucking joke, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, you're all cocksuckers. Oh, that's right. Oh, I got a chance to make a joke off of it. Haven't you?
Right. You're right. And I you don't really see his face when you make that joke. But I'd love to, because I can't imagine he's not homophobic. He seems like such an asshole.
I can't imagine. He may, he lived in his own world. He may have been unaware of me. It's funny. I was on Celebrity Fit Club.
I know. I read that. Yeah.
And Kelly LeBrock was on my
his
team.
ex. Yeah.
His ex. And of course, she was very, very bitter, very bitter divorce. And she said, "Oh yes, I remember when that came out. He wasn't happy about that."
Who else was on Celebrity Fit Club with you?
And I thought to myself, well, that's good. Chaz Bono. She was still Chastity Bono, but she was a very, very butch lesbian.
Sure.
She was my team captain. Kelly LeBrock was on it. We had a bunch of rappers. Young MC, Biz Markie, the late Biz Markie, who was adorable, a very sweet guy. Contessa Vaughn, who was on The Parkers, a TV series.
Oh, right.
And then we had Jeff Conaway, who went crazy on the show and had to leave and was replaced by one of the Ricky Nelson's twins.
Oh, I remember that.
And in fact, he left and went into counseling with Drew Pinsky, Dr. Drew, and was the beginning of the Dr. Drew rehab show. He was patient zero for Dr. Drew.
Which Nelson brother did you have on there? Was it
Gunner.
Matthew or Gunner?
Gunner.
Okay. Gunner. Yeah, I recently did because a lot of what I do on my show is mostly film and TV, but I love 70s TV. And someone had me on their podcast talking about Taxi. So I was really talking about Taxi and of course talking about Jeff Conaway. And I remember him being on that show, but I live here in Franklin, Tennessee, where and you'll often see Miley around here, by the way, speaking of Miley Cyrus.
Right, yeah.
And
Tempest Bledsoe, that was the one name I was fighting for.
Who's that?
Tempest Bledsoe, who was a Cosby kid.
Oh yeah, Tempest. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, funny
that.
Story about Tempest Bledsoe once. When I was a teenage, so my teenage job, Bruce, when I was in high school, in the summers I would work as a messenger in Manhattan. Like, so imagine being 15, 16 years old and just roam around Manhattan. Right. And I worked for a messenger service that actually their biggest client was Avon. So I worked in the corporate offices of Avon, and they actually had an AIDS charity called Dishes on Ice. And because of that, I got to meet lots of celebrities. It was really cool. But somehow you get free tickets to see these talk show tapings, you know.
Yeah,
And I'll never forget, one of them was Tempest Bledsoe. I guess she briefly had one, and I think I was at the first episode. So
wow, yeah, I remember that. And it would have been New York because the Cosby was in New York. The whole Cosby show was in New York. But yes, that was yeah. She was the one I forgot. You mentioned Franklin. Well, I'm going to be in Franklin because I have a show. I wrote a show that's going to
let's talk
play
about it.
Franklin Theater for Studio 10. And
yeah. So I think I know what this is about, but I'll let you talk about it.
Before we rake over the ashes of the rest of my career, it happened during COVID.
Okay.
A friend of mine had an idea, and we developed it. And it's about a comic, a 40-year-old gay comic who's never happened, working as a waiter at Caroline's Comedy Club in New York. COVID hits, the club shuts down. He has to quarantine in the attic of his parents' home in Longview, Texas, where he has an intimate relationship with his imaginary friend, Dolly Parton. She comes off of a poster on the wall. 1978 Dolly comes off a poster on the wall. And it's the two of them and 5 musicians, and she basically saves his life. And it's very funny and very sweet. And it's called Here You Come Again. It sounds like a porno, but isn't. How Dolly Saved My Life in 12 Easy Songs. And we did it on a grant for a theater in Florida, which came with COVID, the PPP grants. They gave PPP grants to arts organizations, nonprofits, so they could keep going without audiences. So we did, and they loved it. And we had to go to Dolly for the music, and I thought she would shoot it down because she didn't develop it, and she loved it, and she's now our partner. And we've done 5 productions of it, and we are now going to open May 17th at the Franklin Theater in Franklin. It's a production of Studio 10, which my friend Patrick Cassidy is now running in Franklin. And hopefully Dolly will come up the street from taking Uber from Brentwood. And
now, is that the Franklin Theater in downtown?
Remember the wigs on the ceiling. And
I'm sorry, Bruce, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is that the Franklin Theater in downtown Franklin?
Yes, sir.
That is a gorgeous theater. I love it.
Venue. It's a great venue.
Oh, it's the best, man.
I've seen it, and it's very intimate, and it's great for our show.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there multiple times. So my wife and I were both actors for years. We both worked at Second City for a long time. It's where we met. And so we have our daughters always try to do a lot of theatrical stuff. And so every summer they do theater camps. And almost all of them around here will culminate in some kind of a show at that Franklin Theater. Yeah. So, and we'll take them to movies there and stuff. That's such a gorgeous theater. I mean, they did such a great job in restoring it.
You did Second City in Chicago?
No, sir. No, sir. I'm not that talented. I did the training center in LA, and then I actually got cast in their Vegas casting at the Flamingo Theater.
Oh my God! I forgot they were in Vegas.
Yeah. I came shortly after Sudeikis and his wife at the time, Kay Cannon. Sudeikis got SNL. Kay went with him, and then of course they got divorced. I think she went to 30 Rock and did some other stuff. But so I mean, I've got an acting background. So it's so good that I moved to Nashville, started working in finance. That's how good of an actor I was. But I have a real appreciation for it. That's why I'm a huge fan of yours and just how naturally funny you are. But I love it. Now, did you have a relationship with Dolly prior to this?
Yes. Well, I met her many about 45 years ago. I met her, and we you meet people when you're out here, and especially doing the kind of shows I do, I meet a lot of people. And in the 80s, they brought me in to help salvage this huge Sunday night variety show that she had on ABC called Dolly! ! And it had opened very strong, but it plummeted afterwards. And the reason was that they tried to turn her into Carol Burnett, and she's not Carol Burnett. She doesn't do sketches. She doesn't have that kind of variety in her. And so we came in and kind of converted it into a concert, a specials. We went everywhere. We went to Hawaii. We opened Dollywood. That's how long ago it was. We went to the Grand Ole Opry. We went Broadway. All these kind of things, and we had a good time doing it. We had fun, but it was not, it was kind of doomed. We were playing it out, but we had fun doing it, and it was fun to write. Before we could make that change, we did some some of the shows where we tried to pare it down. She had one character. Every character she's played in the movies has been a variation on Dolly.
Sure.
Because she is Dolly, and she's not an actress who is going to deglamorize herself or become another thing,
Right.
because that's not really her passion. Her passion is music.
Mm-hmm.
So she always kind of plays that, and if it fits, like in 9 to 5 and Steel Magnolias, it's great. But otherwise, it's just her character, and we had her as a truck stop waitress, and we could have the guest stars come in and play off of her.
Right.
She couldn't do the variety stuff that people do when they do variety specials, even if like they're lousy at it. Even if it's Bob Hope or he's playing ridiculous characters, that was not her game. So, but we had fun and we survived, and here we come again.
I love it. Yeah, she's someone who's just gotten more and more important to people too as she's gotten older. I mean,
amazing.
It really is.
I said to her, I can't believe you have time to do this in between, curing leprosy and doing a moon landing. I mean, what hasn't she done? She has a cake mix.
She has
a cake mix.
That's not bad. My daughters were part of the oh gosh, Bruce, I don't remember the name of it, but they got free books through Dolly's organization when they were little.
Yeah, the free books.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's donated all the last 10 years of I Will Always Love You to the HBCU, the Historical Black Colleges and Universities, in Whitney's name, because she said Whitney made she made more money off the Whitney version than off of her own version.
Sure.
I mean, it's one thing after another. I mean, and when I asked her, she says, "Well, I don't have kids." So she's providing. This is a great philanthropic streak. She takes care of her family, and by extension, she's taking care of all these other people too. So she's pretty amazing. And there's nobody who doesn't like her.
No one.
I have yet to see it. So I'm working with Dolly Parton. They go, oh God, her. Not a one.
Right.
Not a one. And no matter with everybody else I work with, there's always somebody who doesn't like you.
Sure. No, she's beloved for sure. And, especially here. I've actually never been I've been in Franklin now for 15 years. I've never been to Dollywood. I got to make the trip.
When we went, my joke was, it's the best half day you'll ever spend. There was almost nothing to do. The highlight was clog dancing. I think those were a bunch of her cousins. But if you've never seen clog dancing, it was something to behold. Now she's got condos and roller coasters and 95 restaurants, and they do a stampede,
right.
like one of those dinner shows where not knights jousting, but cowboys and Indians, maybe not cowboys and Indians anymore.
Not anymore.
They do some kind of pioneer thing.
Right.
It's amazing. Now it's a destination resort.
Sure. Well, you've done, talking about variety shows, you've done a lot of that stuff.
I've done a lot.
I love going through the credits. And your first.
Right now, I'm writing a book.
Are you writing a book?
I'm writing a book about how I wrote the worst TV shows in history and survived. It's called It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time. And it stems from podcasts, because there were all these podcasts I do with kids in their 20s. I can call them kids in their 20s, asking me about shows I did 40 years ago that I thought were dead and buried, but they know by heart from the internet.
Sure.
The Star Wars holiday special.
I was going to say, that's got to be the most asked one, huh?
It's more people know it than 1941, Spielberg's biggest flop.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it never goes away. George gave up trying to bury it because it became ubiquitous. The Paul Lynde Halloween special shows up every year.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. I mean, the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. The Brady Bunch.
You guys had serious guest stars on that one, though.
Yeah, we did. It was a big ABC show. We had Farrah Fawcett and Lee Majors.
You sure did, yeah.
We did, yes.
Red Fox,
Milton Berle, Tina Turner. I mean, it's an extraordinary group of people.
The fake Jan.
Fake Jan. Jerry Rice, a lovely girl. And you know who she beat? It was between her and Kathy Hilton, Paris Hilton's mother.
Get out of town. Oh, wow. She's batshit crazy now.
Kathy somebody else. I can't forget her maiden name. But then she married the Hilton, and she had all those kids, Paris being one. And I
Interesting.
run into her places, and she keeps saying, "You saved you saved you could have saved me from this life."
I didn't know Kathy
You're,
Hilton was an
you're
actor because I
enjoying
know
it, you
the
know it.
sister. Yeah,
But Jerry got the part. Yeah, exactly.
that's awesome. That's cool, man. So I wanted to go back to Get Bruce, if you don't mind. I want to ask a question about it.
Sure.
So, well, actually, let's talk more about the book. When is the book coming out?
Next year around Oscar season.
Okay. Are you still speaking of
Because
that? Are you still you're
I'm
done?
not officially, not in some years, but people call me the week before and ask me to help. Because what happens is now they generally have hosts who have talk shows, and they bring over the
Their own
staff of
writers.
12 that writes them, and there's no money left for other writers, so they bring in one writer at entry level, and people call me because they know I've been involved, and they say, "Just fix this. I don't like this script. Could you fix it for me, please?" So I'm not officially involved, but
Do you because
that'll
you
be
were
in
the
the
head
books
writer. I
too.
mean, you were involved even long before you were the head writer, but you were head writer for like what, 14, 16 years,
You
something like
know, it's an elastic title. I mean, every year they would say, "Okay, you're the head writer. You're the head writer." You didn't get any more money, but you were the one. There were a lot of writers, and often there were two teams. There was the team that wrote the show, and there was the team that wrote for the host. And I straddled those two teams often.
that? Okay.
So I was like a point person for the staff, for the writing staff.
Interesting.
So I was the head writer, and
Do
then
you
sometimes somebody else was the head writer. But I was a writer on the show for 25 years. So
do you have a favorite Oscar show that you were involved in?
that's a great question. Well, I guess the one where we threw out the script because of Jack Palance.
Yeah, that's right,
You
because
know,
Billy
he
started
started doing
riffing on
one-arm
that.
push-ups, and of course he had been in Billy's movie. Billy
Mhm.
had put him in the movie,
City
and
Slickers, yeah.
what few people remember is that he came out with the first thing he said when he won the Oscar, because Billy had done a joke about him in the monologue, um, was, "Billy Crystal, I crap bigger than him." Was, okay, the bar has been set.
Right.
We can't go lower than this. So let's see what we can do. And when then the push-ups happened, and it was great because Whoopi had won the year before, and she gave him the award, and she was behind him, kind of believe it. So we started writing jokes. We started throwing stuff out and putting stuff in, and it became a thing. And we won an Emmy for the show the following year, because I think we
Yeah.
won an Emmy for thinking on our feet.
Yeah, I love it.
There's,
I'll tell you,
there are few for live television. That's what you have to do.
the Oscars for me were always important, and for my family, we just always loved it. Last couple of years has been kind of boring. It's almost like they're trying to get you not to watch. I mean, and
Well,
I know COVID happened.
COVID
Yeah,
turned everything upside down, but it was on a downward track,
yeah.
because I think mainly there's a proliferation of award shows.
Mm,
That's one thing. And so by the time you get to the Oscars, there have been so many of the same people parading up in different dresses that I think the audience just has a fatigue. And also, the Oscars, unlike all those other awards, are voted on by people who actually make movies, and they tend to vote for the movies they wish they'd made.
mm.
Those are not the movies that people have gone to see in the
That
theater.
that's a huge problem. Yeah,
And so it was that became a thing. I mean, it was um, I think the last time a picture won that was the biggest picture was Titanic, and that was 20 years ago,
sure.
25 years ago at this point, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the bigger problems is there's no familiarity with any of the Best Picture nominees, and ultimately then with very few of the
Well,
actors.
now there is. I mean, the last few years, but then, I mean, to me, the ultimate joke is the COVID year where there were no movies in theaters, and you could. Nomadland won Best Picture, and you could see every single picture that was nominated at home, and never actually get your ass off the couch. Had the lowest ratings ever,
Yeah, that's right.
because people didn't even want to watch those movies on TV.
Right.
So it was indicative of something. It was indicative of what was going around, of what the voting bodies were like, and they diversified. And it's different now, and I don't know what will happen this year, but last year it came back. The numbers went up.
Sure.
So I don't know if it'll ever, with all the other award shows, I don't know if it'll never reach the level that it reached before, because it also doesn't have the cultural significance that it had before because there's the internet and the smartphones. And as we joked years ago, as Steve Martin joked, it was the year of Avatar and the Hurt Locker, and he said Avatar. It's the color, the sound, the drama, the size of the thing. It's incredible. I looked at it on my watch today.
I love that. I love that. Do you have a favorite host? I'm sure you don't want to answer that.
Well, I mean, I love Billy. He did it 8 times. Steve Martin is my personal favorite only because he's such an oddball.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's so unusual. And but I had the best time with Billy. It's like a show. I mean, with Billy, it's. But I had a great time with Whoopi, and I mean, they're all friends of mine. So
yeah.
But with Billy, we reinvented it because he did the monologue, and then a medley of the songs that would have been the title songs of the movies, but weren't. And then the year of The English Patient, when nobody knew any of the movies except Jerry Maguire, and our joke was, this year it's Tom Cruise and all the other guys.
Right.
We came up with the idea of putting him in all the movies, of inserting him in that. And so it became the Billy Crystal Show, the first half hour, which nothing wrong with that.
No, I love it. Because they even show that in Get Bruce. Yeah, he's in the locker room scene, or yelling at Cuba Gooding Jr. Or yelling at Tom Cruise rather as Cuba Gooding Jr.
Right? Yeah.
I love it. That actually made me sad. I gotta say, I watching Get Bruce, because I hadn't seen it since because I used to work in a video store at that time too. So I think I'd just taken it home from the video store when I watched it. But watching it again, it made me sad because I actually miss Billy Crystal. There's no new Billy Crystal movies. I was a big Billy Crystal fan, when Harry Met Sally, and I loved Mr. Saturday Night. And I know he's done Broadway stuff like Month of Sundays, and I think he even brought Mr. Saturday Night to Broadway.
Mr. Saturday Night is a musical, yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't stop working. He did but they're smaller. I mean, he did a picture with Tiffany Haddish about an old comic and a young comic. He's done a couple of things like that. And he's always working. I mean, he never stops. I mean, he's writing. He writes,
But as a kid, it was a thing, like the Billy Crystal movie. And it just made me sad because I really always enjoyed Billy.
Everybody, all careers have cycles,
Yeah.
Especially in the movies. I mean, and when you're hot, you generate a lot of stuff, and then it begins changing.
What do you work on most of the time these days? I know you write the book, you got this show. I mean, are you ever been a traditional comic where you do the comedy clubs? Or?
No, I don't do the clubs. I have an act. I tell stories. I call them a sit-down comedy, but I only do it in places where they're coming to see me. I would never go into a club. I tried, but I was not happy. But I admire people who do it, and that's obviously where the big money is. But I do it as a side thing, and I act, and I did Hairspray for 2 years.
That's right.
Which I love. I shaved my beard of many decades.
Much different look for you. Yeah.
I could not talk them into a bearded lady. They said that's a little too John Waters. I mean,
that would be right on the money for John Waters.
Man playing a woman, but they won't buy that it's a woman with a hormone problem.
Now, how did you like that? Was that nerve-wracking for you, or you were comfortable with it?
Fabulous. I pushed an OCD button I didn't know I had. I loved going in every day and doing it over again. And of course, part of it is that the show is so much fun. Right. I mean, if I were playing Medea, and killing my children and dragging the corpses around, I wouldn't be so lighthearted.
Right.
I understand Vanessa Redgrave now. But it was just a great time. And of course, she's also, that character has a real arc. She starts out as a big slob, and by the end of the thing, she's a glamour girl. So every time you come off stage, the squad grabs you and does some kind of change. So really, the only comfortable moments you have are on stage when nobody's bothering you. So it just kind of it keeps going, and you can't stop the beat.
And you had a 2-year run?
I had a great time doing it. It was incredible.
You said it was 2 years that you did it?
2 years. I did a year on the road, the first national tour, and then a year on Broadway.
Wow, you're on Broadway. If you don't mind me asking, Bruce, do you live in LA now? Or are you in?
I do. I'm here in my Hollywood man cave.
I love it, man. I love it. So you lived in New York for a year then, but you grew up in Patterson. Huh?
I grew up in. Well, yeah. I had an apartment in New York for that year. It was it was a rental apartment that's only rented to people who were in New York doing shows.
Oh, sweet.
Weird. It's a couple from Hong Kong own it, and John Ritter had it. Al Pacino had it. Michael McKean and Ned O'Toole had it, and Goldie and Kurt live on the top floor of the building. They're in the penthouse. It's a high rise at 57th and 8th, and
sure.
so it was full of showbiz.
I get it. Speaking of John Ritter, you did the John Ritter variety show back in the day, right?
Oh my God, you remember that?
Yeah,
I love that show. John Ritter being of sound mind and body.
That's right. That's right. Was he as nice a guy as
he died so young?
Was he as nice a guy as you would think?
He was the greatest.
Yeah.
He was absolutely the greatest. He really was. He was another one nobody can say anything bad about. I mean, he was just incredibly fun and accommodating, and he got everybody. He was just a genuinely good guy, and really, really skilled. What they used to call a light comedian. I mean, he had a very light touch, like Cary Grant. I mean, he wasn't Cary Grant. He wasn't the elegant archetype, but he was. He could do physical stuff,
sure,
which was great, and it was never too heavy. He was cute. I mean, he wasn't like a sex symbol, but he also
was a handsome guy.
He wasn't kind of a comic look. He was a cute guy getting into weird situations. He was brilliant. Sure.
Yeah, he was pretty physical in Three's Company. I mean, there's like a whole. I remember an episode with a hammock where he's like kind of like Lucille Ball type stuff. He did a lot of pratfalls. Yeah, that was cool. And again, I wasn't going to ask much about it because I know you get asked about the Star Wars holiday special all the time. I'm not a Star Wars guy; it's not my thing. But what I've always loved about it, what I love about it is I love that you're one of the brilliant minds behind it. I like that they worked in B. Arthur singing in the fucking Star Wars universe because I love B. Arthur. I'm not a Star Wars guy, but I'm a B. Arthur guy.
It was a variety special, and I don't think if George had known that it was a variety show, he would not have sold them this story, which of course starred the Wookiees, who speak no known language.
Right.
And they cannot dance, they cannot sing, they can barely move. And when they talk, they sound like fat people having orgasms, Trust me, I know. So, that would not have been the ideal center of a variety show. But so we had to surround them with people who were variety oriented. And B was on Maude at the time.
Sure.
Girl. She was a big star, but she had come from Broadway in the original Fiddler on the Roof and the original Mame, and Tony winner. And so she said she would do it if she could sing a song. So we had to find a place for her, and we had her at the Cantina. And on Tatooine, was it on Tatooine? I don't know. I say that.
Yeah, I just know it was the Cantina. Yeah,
one of the Star Wars nerds. I mean, at the time when we were doing it, we didn't know Star Wars was going to become the Scientology of the nerds. That it was going to become some kind of cyber religion, and that you were violating tenets of the faith. That they were like Orthodox Star Wars people coming by saying, you can't have pork, that kind
right. I mean, is that, I don't think that's part of the canon, is it? Because I'm not a big Star Wars guy, but I don't know that
it's like the bastard child,
right?
Because it was around, they couldn't figure it out, and George finally owned it and sold it, or went to let Lego do a Star Wars holiday special as part of his deal at Disney Plus. And he referenced the holiday he invented for the special, Life Day, because he's been trying to get that going. And instead of that, there's May the Fourth be with you has become what he was envisioning as Life Day. So he finally kind of grudgingly admitted that it is a part of the canon. The only reason it remains in the minds of the Star Wars fanatics is that we introduced Boba Fett. And Boba Fett is a character that now has his own show on Disney Plus. But this is like 40-some years ago. George had come up with Boba Fett and wanted to do a feature-length animation, but he couldn't get it made because he'd had Star Wars and he was working on the Empire. And nobody wanted to buy a feature-length animation based on a character that wasn't in Star Wars.
Right.
So he went to Canada, and a small Canadian animation house did a 10-minute Boba Fett what was kind of like a sizzle reel, but it was a little 10-minute episode of Boba Fett, and we put that into the Star Wars Holiday Special. It's the little Wookiee, Itchy, has what a TV set. I mean, it was a computer monitor, and it's a VHS basically, and he sticks a tape in, and he watches Boba Fett.
Ah, got it. Yeah, I just love that they worked in B. Arthur singing. That makes me very, very happy as a guy who's not been in Star Wars.
A Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht song, the Alabama song, you may know it. Frank Zappa did, "Oh, show me the way to the
next whiskey bar."
Oh, no, that's why. And it ends, "Like you, I will die." I thought it's a bit, and the Brecht estate said, "No. 9. He didn't write it to be sung in a bar full of aliens. So Ken and Missy Welch, who wrote all the material for Carol Burnett for years, wrote a song that sounded something like that and something like, "Those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never." It was that kind of a drink, drink, drink song,
right?
And that's what she sings. And all the aliens drink, drink, drink. Some of them through holes in their head, that kind of thing.
She does not strike me as someone who suffers fools.
Oh no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
She had a fabulous sense of humor, but she was dead serious about her work.
Right, yeah.
But she did laugh at it. I mean, she had a great time. I mean, she eventually, when it surfaced again, she kind of said, "Yeah, I did it." And I mean, the truth is, it was her and Harvey Korman who played her customer.
That's right.
Who was hitting on her, and everybody else in the scene with her was a creature. And so they were mostly all stunt people because there was a fight scene in there, and creatures. So there was, it was her and Harvey. There was nobody else for her to relate to.
Sure.
In the thing. So, but she didn't, she was behind the bar and she moved around during the song, and so she focused on making the song as dramatic as she could, and real. She wanted it to be real.
Yeah.
Which I thought, fine, in the middle of this Unga Bluzin thing, go be real.
You go be real. That's the concern. Go with it. I had just one more thing I want to ask you before I wrapped it up, but and again, in Get Bruce, because I love the documentary, but to take it serious.
My mother is the star. Robin and my mother are the stars of that show. My mother's hilarious, and Robin is brilliant.
That's what I was going to talk about, because towards the end of the documentary, you took a serious note, and you talked about a loss that you'd experienced, and there was some dramatic stuff at the end of the documentary, and you can't help as you're rewatching it now to think, wow, Robin's gone, and I just wanted to touch on that, and I'm sure that it must have affected you. You guys seem pretty close.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it was we didn't know what it was. It was a slow decline. I mean, there was a profound depression, and it turned out that he had this newly discovered disease that gives you suicidal tendencies, among other. But it's a very deep depression that nobody realized how deep it actually was and what the cause was. But he'd also had a Parkinson's diagnosis, and I think he was depressed because he couldn't be Robin. He couldn't do the things he wanted to do, and but it turned out to be more than that. This other undiscovered ailment was what eventually took him. So it was just awful. It was an awful end, and he was. It kind of coincided with his last marriage, which was to a woman that a lot of us didn't know, and they had a very private life. So a lot of the people he had been around were not around anymore.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, again, I want to thank you for doing this. Let's talk about the show in Franklin. When's it coming to Franklin? Remind me.
May 17th to the 28th.
Franklin Love
Theater. It. And Studio 10 is the actual sponsor. They are in Franklin, but in a different theater. We've taken this theater for our show. So now, it will be there, and I will.
Will there be an opportunity for fans to meet you in Franklin? Or
I'll be there at the beginning. I'm coming in to put it in, to set it up, and then I'll let it run a few days, and then I'll escape.
Fair enough. Hey, if I get tickets and I email you, can I say hello? Thanks,
you
Bruce.
Can email me, please. Other people don't email me.
Yeah, no, I'm not giving away the email address.
Online. Here You Come Again, the musical. or Studio 10, as in Tennessee.
But I'll buy tickets. I'll tell all my friends on Facebook. We'll spread the word, and I'll email you when I'm coming. Maybe my wife and I can say hello to you. I don't want to be a pain in the ass, but I'd love to say hello.
That's all right.
All right. Bruce, thanks so much for doing this, man. I appreciate you.
Take care.
Yep.